Well, thank you, Malcolm, and hello, everybody. We actually are former sponsors, members, and affiliates with Texas Legends. Those of y'all that with been part of this group for
it's like putting bread on the table. Like,
if everybody wouldn't mind muting their lines, we'd appreciate that. Thank you. This is part of what we do. Zoom, COVID, this is what it is. Anyways, we actually were with the Legends prior. Frisco is one of our facilities, and we actually partnered with Malcolm and the Legends to when we were launching that program up there off of Lebanon, basically just right up the road from HQ for the Legends. Glad to be back here, though. We just recently reinstated our partnership, being affiliated with the Legends again, and we're just glad to do that, to be, because we are in this community. Our facilities are all throughout this, and we live and we work here. So it's good to be here. As you can see, I like to use my backgrounds as well, and I just want to give a shout out to ER nurses, because this is National ER Nurses Week, and as we know, they are in the thick of it, like most people, like never before historically. All right, so let's jump in here. So this is topical, there's a lot of times I do topical presentations, and there's plenty of great topics. But since it's kind of our introduction to y'all, or back to the community, and some of y'all that don't know what we do and maybe aren't familiar with the world of mental health, mental illness, substance abuse, and levels of care, I just want to kind of give an overview. So I'm gonna do a PowerPoint. We're gonna go through some things, but just be aware of that Alex is gonna send these out at the after the fact. So you'll have these things, so you don't have to commit it all to memory right now. And like Malcolm said, we'll have some time for some Q&A at the end. All right, so let's jump in here. All righty. Okay, so let's see. All right, can everyone see the screen? Are we on here? Are we live? Malcolm, y'all got me? Can y'all see this? Are we good? Okay, I'm assuming we're good. Y'all just let me know if not. All right, so we are gonna, so here's the thing. Suicide is a real issue. We talk about mental health, mental illness, self-care, wellness. A lot of that stuff is prevention, so it doesn't come to this. But as a mental health advocate and as an educator, it's my duty and my job to make sure that y'all at least understand kind of what we're dealing with and what's out there right now. Okay, so a little bit about me. I've been in the mental health field for over 10 years. I actually have, my background was business. I came into mental health by accident. I actually was running a law firm in Uptown Dallas, and then the economy crashed in 08 and then 09 whenever layoffs were rampant. I went back out to my native land of West Texas and Lubbock and got into the mental health field by accident because I was looking for a business job and ended up working for a psych hospital. And I got into it, and I'm so glad I did, because the blinders come off and you realize these are issues that exist, but there's help for these things. So I've been doing this since basically since 2009 in the field. I'm the Director of Business Development at Carrollton Springs in the Carrollton Springs system. Carrollton Springs it's actually the hospital itself is down the road off Parker, about 5 minutes west of Presby or THR Plano. And then we have some changes, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm on the board for Mental Health America of Greater Dallas, as well as for Solutions of North Texas, which is a community-based substance abuse program up in Denton. In the past, I've also founded and chaired the South Plains Suicide Prevention Coalition and various mental health shows and things like that. So I work in this industry, but this is absolutely my passion in what I'm doing. So the Carrollton Springs system, and we call it a system because, so back in 2012, we opened up Carrollton Springs. I started in 2013, 45-bed hospital, inpatient and outpatient for adults. And basically what has happened since 2013, we expanded, and now we have outpatient locations that are known as changes. So we went from 45 to a 78-bed hospital, and then we basically service over 200 patients a day between adults and adolescents within our 4 facilities. So that is kind of the Carrollton Springs system. We do adults at Carrollton. We do adults at Changes Plano. We do adults up in McKinney, and then I'm pointing like up and see where I'm pointing. And then we do Changes Frisco is our day program for adolescents just up the road in Frisco. Okay, so everything we do now, it's all going to be pre-COVID and COVID, right? It doesn't matter what we're talking about. It's pre-COVID and COVID. So I wanted to give, so the stats and things I'm going to give y'all, these are just kind of the normal or they were the pre-COVID situation. And of course, things have changed a lot. Truth is, COVID has changed things so quickly. Regulatory bodies and people that report numbers and things like that, they're having to catch up because they're having to change the way that they even gather and report data because the way COVID has impacted all of that. So we're going to go over some stats, and we're just going to kind of talk with, going to go right to the core of what this is. Last week was National Mental Illness Awareness Week. September was National Suicide Prevention Month. So this is real, and I want to make sure y'all get the real information. All right, so let's talk about some facts. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S., and it has been on the increase. I think they really started tracking it back in '99, but it has been on the increase in all of our counties. This is Collin County, Denton County, Dallas, America. This is everywhere. These stats are really important though, because this is a real important thing. 1 in 5 adults experience mental illness in a given year. 1 in 5 and 1 in 8 adolescents. There's actually another stat that I don't have on there, and I actually use this during orientation with employees. 1 in 4 adults have a diagnosable mental illness or addiction. And so that means it is real. It is, and it's actually, unfortunately, the stigma is such that we don't like to talk about it, but that means it's just as normal as any medical condition. But, the stigma is tough in the U.S. It's definitely tough in Texas. So people don't like to talk about it, but that is the reality. Firearms are the most common means of suicide or the lethality. These are all, you can see kind of where we get all these from, but suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 15 to 24 and the fourth for 18 to 65. So this is real. I mean, and there are folks that are on this meeting that, have themselves either a family member of experience. There's a lot of people that they themselves have even had those thoughts of, a lot of people, especially during these times, have had thoughts of committing. It's called suicidal ideation, or know someone that has. So if you're honest with yourself, this is real and it is close to all of us. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that mental illness is a reality. It is not going away. And I can tell you the COVID situation has just exacerbated. It is further people withdrew because they were scared to get help and get out, but that's over. I mean, we are seeing a historic jump in the amount of people that are calling, the amount of crisis calls police are getting, fire and EMT. Plano EMT is actually instituting a tele-assessment service in their EMS trucks because they're on the front lines of it so much, because this situation is just causing things to get, it's getting even worse in that sense. Untreated mental illness is a reality. It can lead to death as well as a ton of damage to the person and their loved ones up until, and I didn't add this, but after the fact. If you've ever lost someone to suicide, which I have, I lost 2 friends whenever I was in high school, and nobody knew what to do with it. We're out in Lubbock, Texas. There's no services. There was no mental health awareness. They brought in some people from Dallas who didn't really understand how to deal with us in that situation. And so it's touched. It should have. It's probably touched most people if you're honest. It's just the reality of it. And things that are left untreated, that's what happens. Okay. So what can we do? Okay, a quality treatment continuum of care. And so folks, basically, I'm just going to give you all an overview. Now, I'm not going to read every line. I don't like doing that stuff. Normally, I'd be just having dialogue with y'all. I'm not even really a big PowerPoint guy. I like to engage the audiences I talk to. Obviously, these are different times. So I don't like, I'm more of a less is more, so I at least want to hit the high points. So a quality treatment continuum of care, meaning all the levels of care that continue so that people can stay connected and stay supported and that their recovery lasts. So your highest level is inpatient or acute. That is a crisis level. So if you can kind of think about a stair step, this will be the top one. Suicidal, homicidal, psychotic, having thoughts of harming yourself or others. And like at our facility, also that does count for folks that need to detox off a substance. There are so many deaths with alcoholic people that try and detox themselves off of alcohol. Withdrawals for alcohol are actually the most lethal of all the substances. So facilities like ours, and of course I'm going to use Carrollton as an example. This isn't really a big Carrollton Springs promo. We're a community partner now. We're going to have a lot of good dialogue after this, but this is just for y'all to understand what's out there, because it's always good to have options, but at least you'll know. So that's where people are in crisis, and they're needing 24/7 observation to basically get stable and safe. That's what that level of care is. Okay, the next level would be partial hospitalization, so that's the next step down. It's basically 5 days a week. It's about 6 hours a day. So these are folks that are moderate to severe. They don't necessarily meet criteria for inpatient, but it is basically a day hospital type program. It does include medication, groups, the psychoeducation, psychotherapy, a lot of processing, and of course med management. And facilities like ours and all of our changes, we actually have a van that will actually do door-to-door pickup for folks that need that, that do need that help with transportation. Intensive outpatient would be the next step down. So that's still 5 days a week, but that's about 3 to 4 hours a day. And at that point, someone already has their own doctor that's handling their medication, and they're basically doing a couple of groups a day. We like to talk about the continuum of care, though, because folks that are in crisis that will then go into a hospital, no matter where it is. I mean, you're suicidal, or they're suicidal. They swallowed a bunch of pills. They were in the ER or wherever. They end up in an inpatient hospital. They're there for 7 to 10 days. Well, they go right back to their situation that didn't change at all, and that's why the revolving door happens, unfortunately, with a lot of people. PHP and IOP are how we help folks that are needing to step down properly, but then you can also direct admit into IOP or PHP without having to go, so it can actually be a good preventative instead of having to go into the inpatient hospital. We don't now Changes McKinney does offer some outpatient services, but the truth is this is more for y'all's information, because I found a long time ago, I never want to take for granted that people understand what therapy entails, because there's plenty of people that have therapy, that have therapists, or their families. There's plenty of people that have not. And so, so that's kind of the next level below. And all of our folks get discharged to a psychiatrist or therapist. We don't let them leave either our outpatient or inpatient until they have this, because that's the right thing to do. Is what's the next step to continue the good work that you put in. A therapist listens, and processing, and that's an ongoing thing, and it is a crucial part of both discharge planning and crisis prevention. Okay, we end up seeing a lot of people in our facility because they quit taking their meds, or they quit seeing their therapist due to different things, and they just started to decompensate. So in addition to that, though, if for folks that do need medication, you've got either your PCP if they're comfortable with it, but most of the time you'll have a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant. Combined with therapy is a great discharge plan, but it's also a great prevention plan. And again, y'all, 1 in 5, 1 in 4, it's normal. And see, I've done corporate work as well. I've been at Carrollton, but I also was at corporate for about 3 years, and then just came back to Carrollton a year ago. I've done work all over the country, and I can tell you right now, I sat in coffee shops in Portland, Oregon, because we were opening up a hospital in Vancouver, Washington. Sat in a coffee shop there, and they're just, it's an open deal. So, hey, how do you like your therapist? And I was on this dose of meds. I decided to do this more holistic approach and have less meds. How's that working for you? That's an open conversation at a coffee shop there. Here, we don't even want to acknowledge any of our family even have anything wrong, and we put all the smoke and mirrors up on Facebook and all that. So that is what we deal with, but this is really a good plan for preventing people getting to that point of wanting to hurt themselves or others. And this is important too. We also, it's not all about meds and group. Okay, meds, group. I mean, that's a lot of, okay, you're sick, you need to put them to meds, get in a group. There's a lot of really awesome holistic things that exist. There's a lot of great providers that do this in our market here. I can think of at least 5 that are within 5 minutes of the HQ for the Legends. Trauma-informed yoga is something that we do at our hospital. We do it at our other facilities. It is very popular. It's basically a breathing technique. So fellas, if you're like me, I'm not doing yoga stretches. I do some Spartan workouts, so those yoga stretches are a whole other level. This is more about the breathing. And this is really big for folks with trauma. Pet therapy, art therapy, health and wellness activities. We incorporate that in our facility. A lot of other programs do too, but there's a lot of outpatient providers that do this. And it's a great option for folks with mental illness and addiction. Also, of course, your organic foods, vitamins, what you eat in your activity. Additional key components to a good continuum. Okay, we talked about hospital, outpatient, all that. I would say these 3 are probably the most important, and this one is the most. That's why I got it in bold, italics. Family involvement is crucial. I will tell you that anybody that comes into our programs, and most people that are in therapy, eventually, we require that the family be involved. Family sessions should be a requirement because, let's just face it, whether it's you, your loved one, your employees, your employer, you can go get help somewhere, but if the family didn't go get the help with you, then they didn't grow either. And a lot of times the family's the problem, or at least part of the problem. We're a big part of the problem. We involve the family, and the family should be involved, because I can tell you what happens. We get a kid will end up going to changes Frisco for our partial hospitalization program up there. Next thing you know, we're doing a family session. And then the mother breaks down. I just can't handle this situation. It's not just my child. I had this happen when I was younger. There's one family that we had 3 of their 5 family members in one of our programs at one of our locations at the same time. And you know what? This family is doing incredible. They're doing great because they stepped up. But that's just the reality. It's not just the person. Oh, my spouse, she's bipolar. She's on meds all the time, and I'm just trying to figure out what to do with her because it causes all these problems. Well, you may be ignoring the fact that you're abusing alcohol or that you have really unhealthy sleeping. You're starting to hear things and all that. So again, 1 in 4, 1 in 5. Support groups. This is super key. NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI North Texas actually has free mental health groups for folks with chronic mental illness and then folks in like their families. You have Al-Anon, which of course is a faith-based group for the family, for the family members. AA is huge. Community mental health groups, like I discussed, and there's other ones. LifePath has some things. Denton MHMR. There's a lot of things out there for support. And then, of course, the faith. I put this in here, the faith component. Church can be very important, and that's a really big deal. I can tell you that most pastors, they weren't trained in mental health, but they are waking up and realizing they have to be able to deal with this. Community pastors, pastoral counselors, and we've seen that. We actually have a program called the Men with Faith-Based program in our hospital and in our outpatient. It's always full, and we work with these churches, and so that's what a continuum is, y'all. It's from all the way from crisis to just the community involvement. Okay, so that's kind of what all that looks like. All right, we'll stay on task here because it's hard when you got all this information. You want to kind of be good about it. Okay, so let's talk about the barriers. This is just something that we just see. We've just seen it over time. Financial is probably the biggest thing. Depending on what someone's insurance, or maybe they just lost it, they're on COBRA, or they're on an HMO plan. Their deductible's super high. It's real easy to go, you know what? There's no way I can afford this. Whatever it is, whatever the out-of-pocket cost is. I mean, these days it can be pretty high. But what I'd say to people, and this is actually a point that I chose to leave in there from a presentation I did in rural West Texas recently in an area that's very underserved. Point is, people have access to resources. There's funds out there. Maybe it's a savings. There's things out there that you're kind of holding on to for whatever the reason was. But right now you have an immediate problem. And I can tell you right now, for folks that have lost people, for folks that didn't get help, and then someone commits suicide, because it happens, unfortunately, way too often, everyone looks back and goes, man, if I'd have just taken the time and spent, and that money could have been well spent getting them help or myself help, so that 2 years from now, I'm actually making progress. 2 years from now, I'm in recovery. I know how to deal with my issues. I know how to process them in real time so that I don't de-escalate. Because the folks that say, I can't afford this, they're the ones that go in and out of ERs, in and out of hospitals, and it costs like 10 times more, down the road. So even if there is financial barriers, you think outside the box. If you're reaching out to a service provider like Carrollton or others, let them know, okay, I've got these financial restrictions, but here's what I can do. Can y'all work with me? Sometimes people can, sometimes they can't, but it's better to just try. Social shaming, y'all, this is everything. This is not just kids. We all know, I've got 4 daughters myself. Social shaming is a real thing. I see that in my preteens and teenagers. We all dealt with it when we were kids, but this is all ages. People just, and a lot of times it's more in their head. I feel like if people know that I have this problem, or my family member has this problem, then I'm going to get shamed. I'm going to get labeled. That can happen for sure, but more often than not, that's not what happens. It's when people are courageous enough to step out and get the help and say, you know what, this is sometimes this can be life and death, or it's just the quality of life for me and my family. But that can definitely be a barrier. The denial is probably the number one. Families, especially when we get these kids, and sometimes family members in general, or maybe 18 to 25s are still living with their families, and it's their parents who bring them in. Their family just is in denial. We can see them in an assessment. You got this 20-year-old that's like, I'm hearing things, or I'm having these thoughts, and you got the family, they're just seeking attention. They're always doing this and all this stuff. And yeah, there's attention seeking sometimes. But when you have somebody that's sitting there saying, yeah, I'm hearing voices and they're telling me to not do good things. Well, that's because they need help. And so the family denial is a big barrier. And then of course, COVID. And I will tell you, when COVID hit, Our company, like everyone else's, we did a expense reduction. We had to reduce staff, furlough people. There was a time where a lot of people did kind of see people withdraw from outpatient programs, not wanting to come in to the hospital out of fear. So that is a reality, and we understand those concerns. But again, like I told you, that fear, what overcame that was the fact that mental illness doesn't go away even for a pandemic. All right. So before I get into the workplace, just to kind of tell you what we've heard, I'm on the Denton County Suicide Prevention Coalition. I'm also on the Collin County or Life Path Hospital Association Coalition. Both of them have reported the same thing. They saw a drop in suicide. That actually happened, and it happened basically. They'll write a book about this someday, but it happened because in May, June, in Collin County actually saw a big drop in June because people were isolated. People were isolated. They were, they were afraid, but they were isolated, and they were basically just focused on crisis management. And honestly, it's almost like you put your issues on hold, and they were able to do that out of survival. But then what we've seen since, and what we saw in the numbers reported in August, the lethality is higher. It's higher in both adult, meaning like people are getting more successful, meaning they're going straight to completion, and the methods are a lot. They're outrageous what people are doing. It's because they isolated, people held off, they stayed home, they didn't seek help due to fears and concerns, understandably. Adults, kids, all of it, and now all of a sudden, bam! Everyone is they're either in ERs or they're seeking help, or again, police are getting calls. We're working with EMSs on a regular basis. So, that's what we're seeing now. So we saw a drop in suicidality. It's actually increasing now. And what we're seeing a huge increase in is the kids program. I can tell you right now, our company, we can't open up a second facility fast enough. And other of our colleagues in the market that are getting into day programs for adolescents and kids, they can't open them up soon enough because, there so many kids are needing this because for some different reasons we'll talk about in a minute. All right, so there's an overview of all of mental health, mental illness, of treatment, of everything. So that's just kind of my open up your eyes to this world if you didn't know about it. If you did, hopefully this was a good reminder. Now, this is the Texas Legends working lunch. Y'all are businesses. You either own businesses, or you're a manager, director, and some type of leadership at a business, or you're just a community employer, marketing person, salesperson, representative, but you're working and you have peers at a business. So again, we're going to talk about some workplace statistics. And again, everything everything that we've got, the stats and everything, it's pre-COVID. We'll talk about COVID, and we'll talk about the COVID concerns in a minute. So this is a really cool chart. This is actually part of a flyer that we produce. We work with a lot of EAPs, national ones, local ones, and businesses. So this is something we put together before. So I'm going to pop this up here. So just for some stats, 35% more days of work are missed by employees with alcohol use disorder. Okay. And all these things, you're going to see stats go, yep, I've seen that, or yep, I've had to manage somebody. Yep, I've had employees with that. $74 billion every year is lost. $74 billion a year due to alcohol consumption. And I can tell y'all, and y'all have all heard it, the alcohol sales have been off the charts since the pandemic happened and people were isolated. So that's only gotten more intense. We've actually seen a lot of people come in for detox because they went, and it was their employer that referred them because they went back to work. They went back to work and it's like, oh crap, you have an alcohol problem. You didn't have one before, but you have one now because you weren't managing your depression or anxiety or whatever. Now they're having to come detox. So that's just what's happened. So drug and alcohol use costs 65% of on-the-job accidents every year. This is what's important. This is why this whole letting y'all know that there's services out there, and it's good to get into something to prevent. Only 10% of people with the substance abuse disorder receive treatment every year. And it's actually only, I think, 12% of people with the mental illness actually receive services. So you're having these issues, they're not seeking treatment. And that can be we talked about the stigmas. Are you an employer that actually tells your employees, hey, it's okay to seek help, I'll support you and all that. I'll talk about that here in a minute. This is also important. Remember the 1 in 5? Well, this is what it looks like in the workplace. 1 in 5 adults, 1 in 5 adults experience a mental illness in any given year. 1 in 5, okay? Now, for those of y'all that are in construction, some of these we pulled. We actually were working with a company that did it was a construction company. So I just left this in there because it's kind of cool or not cool. It's kind of interesting to look at a specific part of a specific industry and what it looks like for them. Second highest for illicit drug use is construction. And then manufacturing is third highest. Okay. And then the suicide rate for male construction workers is 4 times higher than the overall suicide rate. Think about all the expansion going on around here. We got buildings going up. Nonstop in every open square space that we have here in Collin County and in Denton County out east. That's a lot of great growth and expansion. The economy's, going up, but that's what this comes with. And just so you know, that's not just the people that are out there slinging and doing the shovels. That's managers. That's your folks there at the corporate offices. Because this is a 24/7 business and it can wear on people. And this is probably what's most important. And this is why I felt like it was important to give y'all these resources to empower y'all, because y'all are the ones in positions of influence. More than 35% of managers feel they receive no formal support or resources to help employees. A lot of EAPs have picked up, and there's a lot of services that probably a lot of your companies are involved in, but there's a lot of small businesses that have between 5 and 50 employees that the EAP service, it cost feasible and may not be to have a third party manage that. So this is, if nothing else, I want to make sure that y'all are equipped with information, because we work with a lot of individual businesses that just want to get help for their employees, Blue Cross, United, Aetna, whatever the program is. But that's just the reality. So that's what we know. Okay. So again, I want to keep this not too deep in depth. We talked about mental health, mental illness. We talked about the state of things, the suicide rates. We talked about, safety on the work, like what mental illness and addiction look like in the workplace. Now, of course, because we are in a historical pandemic, let's talk about some of those issues we're dealing with currently right now that are new, and that there weren't any PowerPoints really, there weren't stats I can pull from my great government statistics. This is just what we see in our current situation. I put employers, employees / parents, because we're having to do all of them at the same time right now. I should put teachers on there. Okay. I missed out on that one. Should have put / teachers, because I know I've been doing that myself. Virtual fatigue. Alex and I were talking about this yesterday. We were talking, just you're super productive. You're getting a lot more done because you're not having to drive around everywhere, but you're also not taking those breaks to get in your car, to go get lunch, or to go meet somebody for a meeting. You're knocking one thing out after another. I think I did 10 of them yesterday from like 7:45 to about 4:45. And I just talked to Alex, and I was like, wow, I'm outside right now, man. You don't realize what a toll it takes on you. So, that's what we're seeing. So virtual fatigue, which that was never a thing, before. Now it's a thing. Remote working stressors, technology issues. We kind of make a running joke when people are like in a meeting and, they can't mute, or they can't figure out how to get their video to work right and all that stuff. Well, the truth is there's an age population of employers that they're just, they didn't come from that world. They don't understand it. And it causes a lot of stress and issues and anxiety. And we see that. We get calls at night from people that are just calling in because they're just looking for help. And they will tell us, I had a presentation and it got messed up. My Wi-Fi wasn't working. I didn't know how to fix it. I just know everybody was laughing at me. And again, that probably wasn't the case because everyone understands it. But this person they already had existing anxiety. This just made it worse because they couldn't log in properly to a meeting that they were presenting on. And it was so much so that it just totally triggered a whole other set of issues. So that's real. That's what we're dealing with. That's the reality now. Okay. And of course, like we talked about, the remote learning homeschooling thing. You're running a business or running a team and doing all this stuff. And then, we're talking, we had somebody on earlier saying, hey, I've got a 7-month-old. She may start crying, or the dog, or I'm keeping my daughter's cat right now, her little cat. Well, the cat inevitably will run across the screen at the worst time. And then of course, trying to help my daughter log on to her class, while I'm also trying to finish a report. Everyone is dealing with that right now. And it is definitely a stressful situation because again, there's no playbook for how to deal with this stuff and how to manage this stuff up until now. And we're all trying to catch up and create systems in place to help people. And then that just kind of leads to the family dynamic, your work-life balance. Things are not just nice and structured like they used to be. I get up, have my coffee, work out, breakfast, whatever, family, take kids to school, go to work, get home. Some people that hadn't changed depending on what your job is or what you're doing. But for most people, I mean, everything's been flipped upside down. And, I know, we know a lot of families we're working with that they spend their evenings trying to fix, catch up, and deal with what all the problems that happened during the day because they had, couldn't get people on this connection and they missed this and all that. So, and of course, anytime someone tests positive for COVID, now you've got an issue. Now they have to go home and isolate. Now you have to do the tracing. I mean, we're all having to deal with that. Everyone's having to deal with that. So you have all those stressors that, like Malcolm said, whether you have a mental illness or you may not have a diagnosable mental illness, but it's easy to get overwhelmed, and all of that can lead to and trauma can be triggered from when you were a kid. And a lot of this that we're dealing with right now can deal with that, can affect that. So we talked about the adults, and then of course with the students, most of y'all are parents, or you work with people that are, and or have employees that are. Again, I've seen this personally. Everyone, we're seeing this. Like I said, we've been on a wait list the entire pandemic. It's been that way. It was that way before. It's gotten even. I mean, everyone's needing more services. Isolated from friends, difficulty with the virtual learning. They're getting even more screen time, which, remember before all this came out, there was this big movement about, getting the kids off their phones and their tablets and video games to get outside and exercise, right? Well, now we've actually mandated that everybody, no, you actually need to stay on front of that screen all day long. And it is what it is. People have had to do that. But the truth is, it's just like us. And if we're in front of our screen, kids being there even more, it's not good emotionally, mentally, long-term. And that's just what we're dealing with right now. And then all of these things, they equal a higher level of care, higher levels of acuity, mental illness. And so, that is where we are. So it is what it is. It's not to be a doom and gloom, but that's what we're all seeing. And I know that y'all are seeing that. And any one of y'all probably could have done that slide yourself. If I just said, hey, so what are the issues you're dealing with? You probably could have even given me a better slide than that. But we are seeing, but those are the very folks that need to be, it's important to if you're dealing with all that, to have a therapist that you go into another room with. Or, heck, we even have people that will go out into their cars to sit in their go out to their car or their backyard to get on a tele-assessment just to talk to somebody. So there are things you can do. Again, Alex is going to pop these resources up for y'all later, but these are just some good things to know. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline. This crisis text line is really good. We've seen it work really well with kids. There's some regional things like the Suicide and Crisis Center in North Texas, and the Grant Halliburton Foundation has here for Texas. So there's a lot of resources out there, and we will make sure that y'all have those. Carrollton Springs, here's our information. We have adults. We're 24/7 intake. There's no obligation to the phone call. It's a complimentary. There's no financial obligation to the assessment. The bottom line is that don't wait to reach out, no matter what it is. So if you've just heard all this stuff and you've got either yourself, a family member, or an employee or an employer or a colleague, a peer at your work, if you're seeing that they're not doing well and things aren't going well, it's people that wait and say, I don't really want to bother. I don't really want to rock the boat. I don't really want to, ask them if they're feeling okay. I can tell you what happens when people don't. And so that's the whole point of this, is to make sure that you have these resources. And then as we go into questions, just keep this in mind too. Now you've got my email address, and we're the mental health Google alternative, because you can Google all sorts of stuff. There's a lot of bad information out there on the internet. So there you go. All right, Malcolm.
Jeremy, you are the man. A couple questions that came in here. One, and I think that you kind of spoke to it a little bit already. There is, for lack of a better way of putting it, especially in certain geographic regions, a stigma to mental health. And what do you think is key to a business culture to helping overcome that stigma where folks feel comfortable talking about it?
Great question. I will say this: whoever is the leader, whoever is the influencer if you are that one at the company, or in a position of leadership, it's going to start with you. I can guarantee you, a lot of your employees, they want to reach out, but they're scared that if they do, they're going to be seen as inferior. They're going to lose an edge, in their job. Maybe they're working on their career, going up the ladder, and they feel like if they admit that they have an addiction problem, or that they do have anxiety or depression, or things like that, that they need to take time to take care of themselves. that there's that fear. And I can tell you, an employer that can stand up in front at a staff meeting or on a virtual meeting and say, listen, 1 in 5 adults suffer from a mental illness or addiction. I know that. I see it. I'm aware of it. And the truth is, I've even had my own family members that have had these issues. And you know what? It's a normal thing. I want us to have a normal, healthy culture at our company. And I want you guys to be healthy, because a healthy, supported employee, that even if employers that we've seen that allow their folks to have, FMLA or PTO or whatever, to take a few weeks to go into some type of a treatment program, like a day program or therapy, whatever it is, that happens during normal work hours. What we've seen is they come back healthier. They're more stable. They know how to process things. And those employers are like, wow, I have employees that are acknowledging their own mental health. The employees saying, wow, my employer empowered me and supported me, and the loyalty, it goes up 100%. I can tell you right now, for those of y'all that, if you choose to not acknowledge that this is a normal thing and that your employees deserve to feel supported, it costs an average of $10,000 to $15,000 per new employee hire. And sometimes it's more. So if you think you're saving money by letting that person go because they had an issue they needed to deal with, because maybe they lost their spouse and the trauma of that and the way it happened caused them to need to go into a facility, if you think you're saving money by starting over with somebody else, you're really not. Sometimes it is necessarily, those people need to, maybe coming back is not a great thing for them or y'all, but being open-minded and starting to talk about it is a big deal. I will say this, we're going to give resources out. You go tell your folks, hey, we're going to put resources out, because I know y'all are struggling right now and we're all having a lot of stress. We're going to put some resources out for some mental health education and some numbers that y'all can access. You put that out somewhere, either physically at a break room or virtually to your employees in an email. I'm telling you, it's a game changer for people.
I know we had a couple other questions in the chat there. Joella, I think that Jeremy got to the question about voices and hearing things within his presentation. Daryl, yes, we will take this attachment, the presentation there, and attach it to the email when we follow up after this. And then also, Daryl, Jeremy, his question is, what were your thoughts? And I'm gonna add the word real time. What were your thoughts in real time on Dak Prescott's admission of depression and that he'd been going through some things, and the shaming that he received from a media member like Skip Bayless? As a professional, what were your thoughts on those things?
Even right now, I'm getting goosebumps right now. I got goosebumps, and I actually teared up, because being someone who is a mental health advocate, whenever someone like Dak Prescott vulnerability is what people don't want to give, they don't want to be vulnerable. And this man being vulnerable at that stage, yes, there's always going to be those folks that are, and honestly, Skip Bayless and all these all these other folks, my biggest, I work in the second most highly competitive market in the United States, and is DFW. There's 36 other facilities that do what I do within an hour. That's not my competition. My competition are people that don't understand it, that are ignorant of these issues. And mental health, unfortunately, the stigma, that's why there's all these associations and suicide awareness and prevention. So I think Dak Prescott is super courageous. I think what he did was amazing. And the support, maybe in the national sports stage, the truth is there's way more support for him than there wasn't. And honestly, people like, Skip Bayless and all that stuff, that's just an issue that, that's just not something that we have to, that we can deal with. Those stigmas are always going to exist. Dak Prescott, he set an awesome standard that I guarantee you other people are going to follow. Other people did it before him. This is really the first person I feel like in football that stepped up, and more people that can do that, the better.